Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett. This is episode 162. It's March 25th, 2025. Our guest today is a longtime teacher in Raleigh County. He's a humanitarian and what I would refer to as an activist. Mr. Neal Lacey, welcome.
Thanks, Wayne. Good to be here.
Now, how long did you teach in Raleigh County?
That's not as easy a question to answer as you might think. I started teaching in 1966. And the last time I think was about 2015.
Wow.
So that spans almost 50 years, I think, or 60. I can't remember.
That's a long time.
It is a long time. Yeah, I tried to retire in 2005, my wife and I both, from Woodrow Wilson. But it wasn't very successful because people kept calling me back. There apparently is still a shortage of math teachers, and so they kept calling me and say, "Hey, could you fill in for a little while until we find somebody else?"
Now you grew up in the Midway area, didn't you?
I was born in Montgomery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad was a tech student.
Yeah, he was a baseball player.
He was a baseball player. He played all sports at Tech and in high school. Graduated from Collins High School on Epperly Hill in the Wine and Gulf area, which no longer exists. Then he went to Tech. I was born there. My mom was a town girl. That's why I had grandparents at Tech, which came in handy for me when I went to college because I lived with my grandparents when I went to Tech.
That's good.
Yeah, but anyway, I was born in Montgomery. We lived in Copperston in Wyoming County, a really nice coal camp for a while. My dad was hired there as a mine employee. He never went underground, but he was hired as a mine employee. And I think they hired him because he was a really good baseball player. Because they
used to do that all the time, didn't they?
Right.
Well, is he any kin to Cecil Lacey and that?
Cecil's his oldest brother. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, Cecil went to Woodrow, though.
Cecil's in the Hall of Fame at Woodrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he near this very site where we're sitting. He raced against Jesse Owens once. You may have seen that newspaper article.
I have. He was pretty fast guy there, and then he ended up in Wyoming County and his. Left quite a legacy in Mullins area and running different things. What do they call it, Midway? Is that midway between Crab Orchard and Sophia?
That sounds like a good guess to me, but I don't really know.
But you went to Midway Elementary, didn't you?
I went to Midway Elementary, right, graduated from Sophia High School. Well, I went to Copperston Elementary my first 4 years in Wyoming County.
Oh.
Then my dad lost his job at Copperston, and we lived with my grandparents in Montgomery, so I went to Montgomery Elementary, which is now a pile of rubble. I was just there the other day visiting. And I went to Montgomery Elementary for 3 or 4 months in the 4th grade. Then Dad got the job at teaching at Marsh Fork and coaching at Marsh Fork, and we went to, we lived at Midway, and so I went to Midway Elementary the last 4 years of grade school, which was 5th grade to 8th grade back in those days.
Now you had a brother, Danny,
right?
And was he an older brother or younger brother?
He was a couple years younger.
Okay.
Yeah. And
when you went to Midway, you did pretty well in school. I remember seeing one time you were in 3rd in the 6th grade spelling bee in Raleigh County. And you were in the Boy Scouts, Troop 96, maybe.
And my dad was the scoutmaster.
All right.
Yeah, I don't remember the troop number, but yeah, I was a Boy Scout. But as I reluctantly tell people, I was only a 2nd class scout. I never made it to 1st class.
And Donnie Shoup was in there with you.
Donnie was. He lived across the street from me. Donnie and I were good friends growing up.
When you went to high school, what sports did you play? I know you played football.
I was on the football team. Yeah, I played. I was a regular my senior year. I only played 2 years. Well, actually, I only played 1 year, but I was on the bench for 2 years.
Yeah. Number 83, 82? Or?
I think it was 82. I think
I saw a picture of you one time with. Did you play basketball?
I wasn't on the team. I tried to be on the team when I was in the 11th grade, I think, but Coach Douglas had a better role for me. I ended up running the clock at the basketball games for 2 years.
Coach Douglas had, I've told this story many times, that when I was over at Sophie Elementary coaching, he was still coaching high school, and he would let us come down in the evenings after the team was finished and practice some in the evening. Real nice guy. He had now you were involved in the High Y program.
Yes, that's
true. Do they
true.
have High Y anymore?
I'm not familiar with that. It was just an extension of the YMCA. And Claude Atwood was our sponsor at Sophia High School, and I was involved in that.
Now we had, when I worked at the Y, Woodrow didn't have a High Y, and so I started a High Y program through the Y. And we participated in the Youth in Government, and we went to Jackson's Mill for some kind of conference, and we would go to some of these other schools that had High Ys or Tri-High Ys, and Tri-High Ys were girls. And some of the guys I had in there, though, turned out, I mean, Dr. Gary Poling, Darrell Poling, Larry Farley, Rick Snuffer, just a great bunch of, I had about 12 in my group, and those guys did a great job. Loved the Youth in Government when we went to Charleston, helped try to make bills and those kind of things. I think we got more done than some of the legislators have done here in the past few years. But after I left the Y, I think there just wasn't enough interest or whatever. But they especially like to go to the Mullins Tri-High Y because they had a lot of cute girls down there. So it kind of helped the attendance. So.
Mullins was a big school and a bustling community in those days.
Now you were very active in the science club in Sophia. I mean,
I was the president for 2 years, and I participated in the science fair.
Who was the... that was down at Bluefield State, wasn't it?
The state meet was, the state science fair was.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the regional. I've been to science fairs at Concord and Bluefield State.
Now, who was the sponsor of the science club? Do you remember?
Jim Lowry was for part of my career, but Jim had gone away to graduate school from Sophia High School, and then he came back, I think, my senior year. Bill Warden was there for a while. He was my chemistry teacher in my junior year, and then Jim came back my senior year.
Now, your dad coached everything. He coached football. He was assistant in basketball. He even coached wrestling a couple of years there when Lowry might have left or something, in baseball. And did that ever put any pressure on you to be an athlete, or?
Once or twice, maybe. I inherited some of my dad's skills, but not the full measure. I was a decent basketball player and a pretty good football player, but Dad was he was an all-star. He's in the Hall of Fame at Tech, as is my Uncle Cecil, and that's West Virginia Tech. By the way, I have some friends who talk about Tech, and they mean something totally different.
Now, you had also in high school, you were in the James Hornbeck National Honor Society. You graduated from Sophia in '62.
Right.
And you were salutatorian at the school, and you also won the Citizenship Award. So had you always planned on going to Tech because of the grandparents still living there?
Right. I had free room and board for 4 years, which is a pretty good deal. And I managed to obtain a small scholarship. I think it was a $2,000 scholarship. That was for the 4 years.
Legislative
scholarship, right? And I had to, because of that paid all my college expenses. By the way, in those days, $250 a semester paid for all my books, my tuition, all the college expenses, and of course I had free room and board. And I had to commit to repay that loan. Well, it was a scholarship, but part of the obligation was I had to teach in West Virginia for 4 years.
Oh.
And I did that for 4 years and quite a bit beyond that. So I definitely paid back the state for my education.
Now, when you were at Tech, you were who's who and graduated in, 66?
Right.
And when did you meet your wife, Helen?
At Warren Williams Field.
Really?
Yeah, that was a time when people like Dave Barksdale and Pat Fergill were playing on the team. Those are names I remember. My childhood friend, Jim Maynor, was a really good baseball player, and he played in that Warren Williams League. I went to a game with him once and met Helen there. We became friends, just friends for a little while, and she was an enjoyable conversationalist, and I really enjoyed talking to her. Made quite a few phone calls just to talk. Not really any romantic interest at first, but later it just developed into a close friendship and then a romantic relationship. And we've been married for 58 years, I think.
You got to get that right now.
Yeah. Well, we were married in 66, and this is 25. So I think it'll be 59 years in August.
Okay. Now I guess the back then they had a Warren Williams League, and they had guys from 16 to 18. They had an independent league, all that. A lot of ball playing that was going on down there. Now, your first teaching job, it was at Glenn White Junior High?
Not exactly. That was actually, I think, my third, if you don't count student teaching. That was my first one in Raleigh County. About halfway through my senior year at Tech, I was only taking one class in my student teaching in the spring of 1966. And a fellow in Clay County left his teaching job to work for the Department of Natural Resources, I believe. But he left in March, maybe, and they were desperate to have somebody to fill that in. So the teacher education department at Tech let me go to Clay County and fill in that job for the last 2 months of my senior year, and I got credit for my student teaching there.
Oh.
And so I taught at Clay County High School for 2 months. And then during the summer of 66, I worked in a federal program teaching class at a kind of a makeup math class at Marsh Fork High School, where my dad first taught, for 6 weeks, I guess. Then I started at Glenn White the next year.
Now, Glenn White, a lot of people, I don't guess the building's even there anymore. I'm not sure.
It's gone.
Yeah. And it was an elementary school when I was down at Sophia, and they had an indoor gym. It wasn't very long.
That's right.
You could get a rebound, turn around, and shoot at the other basket.
Yeah, I coached the basketball team there when I was, that 1 year I was there.
You were also the 4-H sponsor too, I think.
Yeah, that's right. There was a 4-H club, and I was a little bit of a 4-H'er when I was in grade school, but not. Had an interesting experience with that 4-H club. I wanted to take the club on a social outing, so we were going to have a skating party. And I called the skating rink and scheduled a party. And one of my students happened to mention to me once that they said, well, Diane won't be able to go to that. They had this student named Diane who was apparently her skin color was the wrong type to go to the skating rink in those days. So when I found that out, I just called the skating rink and said, "Sorry, we can't come."
Mm-hmm. Now, was Pete Colasorto's mom the cook down there when you were there?
I don't know who the cooks were.
She was a cook there for a long time, and used to make the bread, homemade bread, all the time, and everything I think she probably was there during that period of time.
A very good chance.
Now, Ben Cook was the principal, though.
Ben Cook was my principal. He was my first principal, and my assistant principal after I transferred to Park.
Yeah, he had, and then you kind of followed him over to Park.
Right. Well, the whole faculty, all four of us, Ben and myself and Gene Seidman and Fred Tassatino, all four of us went to Park the next year.
Now, while you were, how long were you at Park?
4.5 years.
4.5 years. And then, so you went. Then when you went to Woodrow, how come you didn't teach science? You always seemed to be interested.
I wanted to teach science, and actually, when I was at Tech, I took more classes in biology than I did in math. But I majored in math because when I took the ACT, that was my highest score. So I said, well, I guess that's what I should major in. So I majored in math, took more biology courses, and I wanted to teach biology. But that was during the Sputnik area, and they really needed math teachers. So they said, no, you're qualified in math. You'll teach math. And I've enjoyed it. I was happy there.
I know when you were at Woodrow, when I was there, you helped run the Bible Club, which was a very active club. They were, we did participate in parades. We had a morning worship service. They had a radio program for a while. They had a very, very busy, one of the busiest groups at the school.
Yeah, I remember an associated group. I think it wasn't exactly the Bible Club, but a lot of the kids from the Bible Club used your pickup truck to be in that parade, but the Christmas parade one year.
Yeah. And then, but you got really involved in the conservation club too.
Right.
Was Jerry Moomaw there then?
Jerry, I was kind of helping Jerry with the conservation club, and then of course he had an untimely death in the middle of the year, so I kind of took it over from there for a while. And that was one of the, I got to know a lot of kids that way. We had a lot of really good students that were in the conservation club. And I was very close to that for a long time. It was very close to my heart too, because I'm definitely a conservationist.
Do they have conservation club now?
They have one, I think it's called the Earth Club maybe.
Oh.
You know what they've done with they've transformed the old pond into a wetland.
Yeah.
And that group is responsible for that transformation.
Yeah, I was over there the other day and looking and see what they had done. It wasn't quite like I thought it was going to be. And I'm still kind of curious what it almost looks like. Half of it's going to be covered with a deck.
Well, they're making a boardwalk there so that people can walk out and look at nature close up. Yeah, and it's a mess right now, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be really nice. But have you been to Cranberry Glades and seen the boardwalk they have there through the glades and at Canaan Valley they have wetlands that have a boardwalk going through the middle of them. It'll be a smaller version of those things. I think it'll be really nice when it's finished.
But actually, it was a conservation club that had that pond built in the beginning.
Yeah, Jerry Moomaw was responsible for that. There's still a marker there near the pond commemorating his work at the conservation club. Well, near the X pond. Yeah.
Now, I can remember we had would occasionally play basketball after school. There was a group of guys, me and you and some of the high school guys, Barry Kleiber and Dale Stover, some of these guys, and would play whenever the gym was available. And some of those guys were pretty good ball players. I wasn't much of a basketball player, but I enjoyed spending time with them. But you got involved in directing the homecoming parades. How many years did you do that?
Well, back in those days, you didn't volunteer for those. Teachers were assigned to do extracurricular activities by the principal. So I was assigned to help Ed Cruz with the homecoming parade. And I helped him for a couple of years, and then I took it over. That would have been about 1974 or 5 when I first took it over. And I was, except for a couple of years after I retired, I directed it until 2 years ago.
Wow. And then you also ran the homecoming dances for a while, didn't you?
No,
you didn't do none of those. No. I thought you did, but
Jeff Britton did those for a long time, and I'm not sure they have a homecoming dance now. They may, but
I don't think they. I know they don't have to have it after the games or nothing. I'm not sure they have a homecoming either. I kind of was glad though when they used to have it before the football game on Fridays, and I just don't see how the coaches could handle the kids, going in the parade and then coming for the game. You just kind of get unfocused, And so now they've changed it to another night, which I thought might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't know, but just sometimes you get kind of crammed too much in there. But now, somewhere along the line, you started filming basketball games and filming football games. And when did that come about?
Well, I was. I think it was in the fall of 1970. And I'm sorry, 92. Dan Doman and Ben Anderson were filming the games before that. And they wanted to give it up, so they asked me if I wanted to do it. So I started with the basketball and football. And since I had the camera, I thought, it's a shame nobody's filming the girls' basketball or in the other sports. So I started filming girls' basketball once in a while and some of the volleyball games. And when soccer became big, nobody was filming the soccer games, so I started filming some of them. And I have quite an archive of Woodrow Wilson athletic events from that time on, and I'm trying to put some of them on a YouTube channel so people can watch them.
That's a good idea. And do you still do those?
I still do basketball, boys basketball.
Still do basketball.
Yeah,
that requires a lot of nights out and travel. Do you do away games too?
Sometimes. We went to Charlestown. What's the school? There's a
Washington.
School up there. Washington. Yeah, we went to Washington High School and filmed a football game this year, and I put that on YouTube. So I did I do football games in warm weather, but when it gets icy and wet, I just watch them from a distance.
Now, speaking of filming, I mean, I've seen you at a lot of the social events for the plays and concerts and those kind of things. So do you keep an archive of those things too?
Yeah, I've got those too. I've been doing the plays at Woodrow for a number of years, so I have an archive of those, and I'm trying to share those with as many people as possible. As the parents, some of the parents or grandparents can't make it to the shows, and the concerts too. All the choir and band concerts, I do those as well.
That's
and I'm
great.
trying to share those with people so they'll have the memories. I wish I had some things like that from when I was in school, but I guess cameras had been invented then, but nobody had them.
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of strange. Even when I was growing up, I had very few pictures of me when I was a kid. I mean, I just not. Now, we had more by the time my boys were 2 years old, more than I've had in my life. But now with phones and those kind of things, it makes it much easier. During this time, the internet wasn't there, social media wasn't. You were a man of letters. You wrote a lot of letters to the newspaper.
Yes, I did.
And it was, and knowing you, of course, it always got my attention, whether I agreed with you or not. Most of the time I agreed with you, but some of the examples of the letters that I remember, you wrote a few about organized gambling when the state was wanting to get into organized gambling. You wrote one on the use of public buildings for religious groups. You wrote smoking in public, like restaurants, those kind of things. Several on those, which eventually they did pass laws to cut that out. You wrote a few letters on endorsing movies, like one movie was Life is Beautiful, one was on Malcolm X, saying people should see that. You wrote one on skipping school for basketball tournaments. Kids used to buy tickets, I guess, and then just skip school. I think that's what the gist was.
I think that did happen once in a while. Buy a ticket and use that as an excuse to miss school.
I might have been guilty of that. I don't know. But you did one on or maybe a couple on freedom of press with Judge Bork, and I don't quite remember exactly what that one was about, but I do remember that the editor of the newspaper and you kind of skirmished back and forth.
Yeah, we did have some disagreements there. Over the years I've matured a little, and I've come to learn. I think that I was he was probably riding in the right direction more than I was at that time. I've mended some of my ways. I guess you'd say I was probably a little more conservative then than I am now. I've learned some things over the years.
Now, one time, this one, it actually was printed in the Charleston paper, and you were apologizing for the fans, Beckley fans, and how they displayed their sportsmanship at the state tournament. What prompted that?
I just like to treat people nicely. I like to be nice. I think we should be able to compete and have a rivalry without being unpleasant. That what happened is, I think that incident you're talking about probably was when we played Logan in the state tournament, and one of our students, I believe, attacked the Logan mascot and kind of damaged the uniform. And I thought that's not a good way to represent the school. Woodrow's fans at that time had kind of a bad reputation among the other schools. The SSAC, the Activities Commission, actually did surveys among officials and among principals to talk about sportsmanship, and Woodrow didn't look very good in those days. The officials didn't rate us very highly, and other principals didn't rate us very highly in our sportsmanship. And I think if you're going to play sports, you need to be a good sportsman. You need to be friends and treat people nicely.
Well, I actually was on a committee one time that we came up with a policy in Raleigh County for coaches and on technical fouls. And it ended up not being a real popular decision that our committee came up with, because the first person that was punished was Dave Barksdale,
right.
And it ended up it was a state tournament game.
I remember when he had to sit that game out.
Yeah, and so our committee wasn't extremely popular. However, today I still feel like we made the right decision, and Dave and I've talked about that before, and. But sometimes you get in those situations. Now, you wrote a letter when it hasn't been that long ago, but when they were going to when they were building the new middle school, Beckley Stratton, mm-hmm. and over the name of the school, you wanted it to be called Stratton Middle School. Yeah. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I just thought that. Well, you were around then too, when the new Woodrow Wilson High School was built, and it shouldn't have been called Woodrow Wilson. It should have had another name. But when it was built, they kind of shortchanged the Stratton community, because all of the a lot of the trophies from the old Woodrow Wilson came to the new school. None of the trophies from the old Stratton came to the new school. They've since been lost, and and of course they kept the name Woodrow Wilson. They kept the Flying Eagles. They kept the school colors, and the Stratton legacy was pretty much lost in history, and it's being revived a little bit now. The basketball team has dedicated a couple of nights to Stratton High School and remembering that at some of the ball games. And the team has worn jerseys that said Stratton on them as they warmed up. So the memory is being revived a little bit. But yeah, the Stratton community was treated very badly, and I just wanted to make sure that name was preserved. Of course, it's now preserved in the name of the elementary school, mm-hmm. and also in the Beckley Stratton, which I think is an awkward name, but I may be partly responsible for that. I don't know.
Well, I was in the first graduating class at the new school, and so a lot of our classmates had been brought over from Stratton, and it was not a consolidation; it was an absorption.
Yeah.
And being on the sports teams, it didn't seem to have. I thought the coaches did a pretty good job of handling it. One, some very good athletes came from Stratton,
Right.
and I thought the coaches handled that pretty well. But in the school itself, there was a lot of fights, there was a lot of disruption, and a lot of it was because the kids didn't want to be there. Especially the kids that were in the 12th grade that had gone to Stratton from the 9, 10, 11. And then there was 2 girls that I sat very close to me that I never had. The school was so large that I had never met until graduation practice. And both of them were from Stratton, had come from Stratton High School. And we didn't bring anything, like you said. We didn't bring no school colors, no names, nothing and they didn't have a choice. Even today, when we have our class reunions, very few blacks come to our class reunion from Woodrow. They have a Stratton reunion, and they go there, the ones that actually graduate from Woodrow, but they had gone to Stratton. I wish, be honest with you, I wouldn't mind seeing them name the Woodrow Wilson Beckley anyway, Beckley High School.
Yeah.
Most of the time I refer to it as Beckley.
Right, and I think the people in the programs, in the athletic programs, are now starting to talk about Beckley more than they talk about Woodrow Wilson. They kind of leave the name Woodrow Wilson off. And Woodrow Wilson, of course, looking back at his legacy, he had a questionable legacy when it came to race relations.
Absolutely.
One thing.
And they bring that up every once in a while, but it's still the way it has been. And then there was some question interview that I had just a few weeks ago. When they tore down the old Stratton High School and they built a new facility, which is a beautiful first-class facility, but there were still some people in the community thought the old school should have remained there and used for something, and they referred to all the money that was put into the old Woodrow Wilson, which they're still putting in. It's Park Junior High now. And they just said it wasn't no balance. They immediately tore down Stratton High School, but yet in total they've put almost $40 million into Woodrow Wilson High School, which was 30 years older. Yeah. And it's something to think about, I guess. But now you had you're talking about playing basketball. You played in the Y League too, in your 50s, weren't you?
I was in my early 50s when I finally gave up playing basketball. And I asked my doctor when I was about 40 how long I should keep playing basketball. I'm playing full court, and he said, well, the good it does to your cardiovascular system will probably outweigh the damage it does to your muscles and your skeletal system. And he was right. My heart and lungs are in pretty good shape now at 80 years old. I have new knees, and my ankles aren't in real good shape, but my heart and lungs are pretty good because of all the basketball I played and other activities too.
Warren Thornhill, he used to come up and play at the Y on Wednesday nights. And I guess he played until he was in his 70s, not in the league, but he would play pickup and stuff. And one particular day we were talking, and he held up his tennis shoes, and he said, it's kind of sad. This is the last pair of basketball tennis shoes that I'm ever going to purchase.
Yeah.
This is it, And but he hung in there for quite a period of time. You have been involved in curtain collars back in the old days when they had it uptown for a while, and then they had it over Mount Hope. And you directed a play over there. What was the play?
It was the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah. Was that the first one you ever directed?
I think it probably was. Yeah, and I almost had to write a script for that too because we couldn't find a decent script for it. So I had to take the novel, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and kind of write the dialogue myself using C.S. Lewis's words. We purchased the rights to do the play by that title. But I had to augment it a little bit because the story it didn't have a resurrection in it, and that's the resurrection is one of the most important parts of that story.
Yeah.
So I had to put that in there, and I directed that. I also directed a couple of shows at Woodrow back in the late '80s. I did one called "The Curious Savage," which is about people in a retirement home. It was a very poignant but funny story. And one called The Foreigner, which was about an English guy who came to stay at a lodge in Georgia where the KKK was very active. And since he was a foreigner, they didn't know what country he was from, but they treated him badly. It was one of the most hilarious comedies I've ever seen.
Your daughter, one of your daughters was right around at that time, wasn't?
Well, both my daughters were in a couple of plays that I saw and directed. My oldest daughter still is active in theater in Morgantown. In
really?
A group called MT Pockets Theater Company. She's active in that. She's actually, I think she's filming taking part in filming some kind of movie right now.
Wow. You remember Kenley Smith?
Yeah, she and I are friends on Facebook.
Yeah, he and Vicky Persinger, she had written about a life activity, and he turned it into a play in Tennessee, in Nashville. And he actually, I think he's a monitor at one of the playhouses down there and director. And it was, I still kind of stay in contact with him. That's all he does for a living. I mean, he does a good job, and he was an excellent writer when he was in high school. And how did you get mixed up with Theater West Virginia? I mean,
well, Helen and I wanted. Our kids were about to start college, and I was a teacher, and she was a school secretary, so we didn't have a whole lot of extra money. And we had scheduled our salaries to be spread out over the 12 months so we wouldn't be hard up in the summertime. We wanted a summer job, and we liked the idea of having something we could do together. So we applied and we were both interested in theater. So we applied to at Theater West Virginia, and both got jobs out there. We spent our summer evenings there for about 28 years.
Wow. Did you ever act in Theater West Virginia?
Not in Theater West. I never acted professionally. I have done some several community theater. We did. I was asked to play Bob Cratchit in A Christmas Carol at the Princess Playhouse in Mount Hope. That was Michael Martin. I think it was his first time doing Scrooge. He's done it a lot since then, but he was Scrooge. I was Bob Cratchit. I carried Tony Colasurto. You know Tony Colasurto? I carried him on my shoulders. He was Tiny Tim.
Yeah. What happened to the theater in Mount Hope?
I guess the interest, either the upkeep was too hard or the interest just waned, and there's just, or maybe Michael Martin, who was running it, maybe he just wasn't able to do it anymore, because Michael's still acting in Theater West Virginia.
Yeah. Now you're talking about working in the summer. I was the same way. I usually did construction work in the summertime when I first started teaching, and but you and I we worked one summer for the career education.
Right.
Helped do a book. I think it was a book of lesson plans or something with Bev Waddell, and I can't remember.
Gilbert Pennington.
And then he used those in his class that he taught. And that was a fun year because it was pretty good money for the summer, and plus I didn't have to get dirty and sweaty on this. And we put a lot of effort into that thing.
Yeah, it was a tough job because we had to be creative. We had to do some research, but we also had to be creative, and it was kind of a tough job. And that was the summer that you helped me put the roof on my house, I think.
Yeah,
You taught me a lot about roofing.
Did it leak?
No, it lasted for several years.
Well, Diana and I, my wife, were talking earlier. I had gone to Washington, D.C. in the summertime for 3 years, and actually when I was 16 years old. And I went 3 years in the summer. I worked concrete and roofing, did all kinds of different things. And then when I retired from teaching, one of the reasons I retired is because I wanted to work in construction before I got too old that I couldn't do it. Yeah. And it's in my family. My grandfather, my great uncles, and my dad, and my brother, all of them did construction work, and I just wanted to do that. And so, 2.5 years after I retired, I worked every day, and mostly for educators. My nephew and I put down tile and laminate floorings and all kinds of stuff for mainly educators. And it got to a point, we were working 6 days a week, and I was in my 60s, and I said, I think I'm not going to do this. I think I've got it out of my system. Yeah. So I retired from that too. But now you, at Theater West Virginia, I mean, I've seen you guys. You've been the house manager, the concession manager. You've handed out programs. You've had a lot of different titles.
Well, I was most of the time I was the house manager, but all of the jobs from cleaning bathrooms to handing out programs, I had to coordinate everybody who did that. But I tried to get into a little bit of it myself, partly because I wanted to understand what people were doing. I took a course in supervision once, in educational supervision, and one thing I learned in there is that a good supervisor needs to understand what the people he's supervising are doing, and so I had a hands-on approach to almost everything.
It seems like the actors and actresses of Theater West Virginia are getting younger and younger. I don't know whether it's me getting older.
It seems to me like everybody's getting younger and younger too. I still do some mentoring at Woodrow Wilson, and I walk through the halls there and say, gosh, these people all look like little kids now.
Well, I remember, though, the old Yule Cornett and all those guys, and it just seemed like they were older at that time when they were playing the roles, and I didn't know. And then the other day I went by up North Canal Street, and I saw a for sale sign in the yard of Stephen New's place, and I thought that was something that Theater West Virginia had been using, and I hate to see them lose that.
Yeah, they use that as a rehearsal space. They have one large room they can use as a rehearsal space, and then several of the actors used to live there during the summertime. And I don't know what the status is there now, but I noticed the for sale sign as well. Yeah,
and they've got a new director again, don't they?
Right. I think the person who they hired as not as the director, but as the artistic director who supervises all of the production. Has been doing there's a theater festival at Shepherd College every summer, and she's been doing that for a while, and now she's coming down here and going to be the artistic director. They're still looking for a general manager to take care of the business aspects of the company.
Now that you're also pretty involved. Well, I was wanting to make a comment too. I went and saw the Wizard of Oz Woodrow Wilson group put on Thespians, I guess. And it was probably the best one that I can remember in a long time.
They did a really good job.
The technology was great, the dancing, the number of kids and actors and actresses, and I mean it was. I just came out of there shaking my head, thinking this was something else. This is something special. I've seen some good ones, but this was probably one of the best ones. And of course, being familiar with the Wizard of Oz sometimes helps, But now you were involved with Beckley Concert Association. How long have you been? Are you the president?
Not right now. Yeah, I was for 5 years. John Urich, who I knew from Theater West Virginia, who was a musician there and musical director and a great musician and music teacher, he recruited Helen and me for the board there, and they asked me to be the president once, and I did that for 5 years. It got us halfway through COVID, and then Scott Worley took over and got us the rest of the way, got us recovered from that. But yeah, we still work. Helen and I are the hospitality coordinators right now, so we take care of the needs for booking hotels for the artists who come in and perform, and taking care of their food, that we've making sure they're well fed. They always like our hospitality, and it gives me a chance. I love that job because it gives me a chance to meet these distinguished artists. Like Mark O'Connor was here last year, and we got a chance to talk to him and his wife for a while. I sat and had a snack once with Ralph Stanley.
Yeah.
And
well, how do you who comes up with the guests? I mean, how do they do that?
Well, I'm also on the selection committee, and we there 4 or 5 of us gather together several times a year and watch YouTube videos and find literature and talk to people, and we just find out what's available at a price we can afford, and we negotiate with them and try to get the best acts we can for the lowest price we can. Right now, George Shriver is our selection committee chair, and he's the one who does most of the legwork, and then the rest of us get together and help him make the decision. So we're trying to diversify our offerings. For instance, we had a group that played Stevie Wonder music.
I was there.
Okay, and I think at that time, we want to diversify our audience too, because we have a lot of different people in the community. We like to get more people involved in our audience. And I think we probably had about 20 people of African American descent in the audience that night. And that's kind of unusual because 10 years ago, it was a purely white audience, which is not really a good thing when you live in a diverse community.
Now, when that first started, you primarily had classical music.
It was almost all classical music. Now, Helen and I have been members on and off for most of the time we've been together, which is over 50 years. We used to go to Park Junior High, where I taught for a little while, the auditorium there. But now we do most of them in the Woodrow Wilson Auditorium, which is a great venue, but it's awfully big. And so, we have a capacity of 1,100 people there, and our audience usually numbers from 200 to 250. So there are a lot of empty seats, and the artists who come there say, wow, you've got a really nice facility here, but not very many people.
Yeah.
And we're doing one next year at Black Knight, at the Black Knight Park, which the former country club. We're going to do an Oktoberfest in late September, and have a polka band there, and have a floor available for people who want to dance. And of course, you've got to have, for an Oktoberfest, you have to have beer available. Don't do it myself, but a lot of people do. So the country club is offering that on the side in a different part of the facility, and we plan that. And we like to have tribute groups too. Like we had a few years ago, we had a group that played the Eagles songs, and they dressed up like the Eagles, and they sounded almost like the Eagles. It was a really great concert.
Sometimes the tribute bands are better than the original.
Sometimes it.
Now, I missed that one. I'd like to see that one.
Yeah.
I really liked Simon and Garfunkel. I liked the Beatles the tribute. I liked Jimmy Buffett tribute. Yeah. That was really something. You had one group there at the Playhouse that played 2 or 3 different shows, but in the Playhouse is a good venue, but it seats like 180 people, something like that, right. And then it's for older people. They want to sit closer to the front because it does go up and it's a little tougher.
For people with long legs and big feet like myself, it's a little hard too. I have to sit on the front row there. Yeah, that Al G and friends, they were from the Charlotte area. He was good. He sounded a lot like Al Green, which I think maybe why he calls himself Al G. Yeah. But and we had to divide that concert into 3 parts. So they performed 3 shows for us over the period of 2 days. And
now you get some help there financially from the Walker Foundation, or?
Well, we have several groups that contribute to the Beckley Area Foundation, and there are several groups that funds that we get money from every year. That keeps us alive. We really couldn't survive without charitable contributions. We charge a ridiculously small amount. We charge like $50 for 6 concerts.
Yeah.
And so we have to be underwritten by the Beckley Area Foundation to
one that I was really surprised at was I'd never heard of the Cleverleys, and it was on a Sunday afternoon, I think, or Saturday afternoon, I can't remember now, but went over there and that place was packed. And then so we started talking to people, and they followed them everywhere. And I had to go home. I had to come home and look them up. I didn't even, but they were great musicians.
They were just absolutely incredible. The fiddle player and the banjo player, they were great. They really were very talented. But what amazed me about them was they started out the concert, and you get this bluegrass band. They are a bluegrass band, but they started out playing a song by Journey.
Yeah. Or Walk Like an Egyptian.
Walk Like an Egyptian. And most of the music they did was either pop or hip hop.
Yeah.
They didn't really do any bluegrass music, but they used bluegrass instruments. And I loved them. They are very popular. Very famous, but I never heard of them either.
And there was a lot of people there that you probably wouldn't see at another one of your concerts, but they were there at the Cleverleys. And it was crowd. It was the biggest crowd that I've seen since we've been going for the last 4 or 5 years, and it was probably the biggest crowd that I've seen.
Did you see the Mike Mitchell concert?
No, I didn't.
He's from Floyd, Virginia. He actually had a group, an album. His new album was #1 or maybe #2 on the bluegrass charts, the Billboard bluegrass charts. But he came over. He's a bluegrass musician, and I'm just getting into bluegrass the last few years. But he was really, really good. We've had him a couple of times.
Yeah, I was. But what you got going on now? What's in the near future? Any plans or?
You mean personally?
Yeah.
Well, we travel short. We take a lot of short trips. Last 2 years ago, we went to the Grand Canyon. That was the longest trip we've taken, unless you count school trips to Europe, things like that. But we are still into musical theater and any kind of theater, really. So we have a subscription to the Barda Theater in Abingdon, Virginia, which is a great place to go.
We've been there.
Almost like Broadway. They're really good. And we hope to go in a couple of days if we can get tickets, because there are 3 shows I want to see. During Hamlet, I love the way they do Shakespeare. They make Shakespeare understandable to ordinary people like me. And they explain they explain the plot before you do it.
That's
they explain what's going to happen, and then they actually can project the words on a screen near the stage if you need to see that, and sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah, we've been down there to a few things, and then across the street they have the smaller theaters at Abingdon.
Yeah, that's part of the Barda Theater too.
Yeah,
they have some really good shows there too. They do wonderful work, and we also subscribe to the Greenbrier Valley Theater, and of course Theater West Virginia. I still don't work there anymore, but I still go out and film the shows for them, so they have archival copies of the work they've done.
All the time that you've spent in teaching and all the extracurricular, or we'll call them extracurricular, activity, would you do anything different?
Oh, I do a lot of things differently. Yeah, I believe, yeah. I'm a lot smarter than I used to be. And I've made, I guess everybody has made some mistakes they'd like to go back and correct, but we have to live with them. But yeah, I can't think of any big things I would do differently. I'm sure there's some little things I'd like to correct.
When the teachers struck, did you strike?
I reluctantly, I did. I didn't really like the idea, but I didn't think I should be there taking my pay in an empty building while other people were out sacrificing. So I went out and I joined the picket line because I wanted to make sure people were nice to each other. I didn't want people yelling and threatening anybody. And people from another county during that strike said, well, if you can't close your schools, if you can't picket, we'll come up and do it for you. And so I was like, no thanks, we'll take care of it ourselves. Funny though, the strike we only had a strike for like 2 or 3 days, and then the state superintendent closed the schools. So I spent the last 3 days at school. And what I was doing was, we were in the state tournament. The boys basketball team was in the state tournament that year. And that was 1990. That was our first modern state championship when Tink Brown and Brian Neighbors and those guys were playing. But I spent my days at the school on the phone taking reservations for the booster buses that we took there. So I helped coordinate the people who went on the bus, and then Helen and I were chaperones on the buses. So we were busy with the state tournament while we were on strike.
Now, in 1990, you wouldn't have got paid if you were striking.
The state, when we probably didn't for a couple of days, but then the state superintendent closed the schools. And so since we're salaried employees, we were still paid for those days when the schools were closed. So we lost a little, but
yeah,
we didn't lose a lot. And it was pretty successful for a few years, for a few days. They actually gave teachers some authority, some power in deciding curriculum. They established the faculty senate, which only lasted a few years, but at least the idea was to give teachers a voice in what was going on in the schools.
Would you recommend, with all the changes that are taking place in education now, and with a lot of the new teachers don't have the benefits you and I have, and the way they're changing the scope, I mean, with more homeschooling and charter schools and things like that, and it looks like in some situations, I don't know what all they're going to cut back, what's going to happen. Would you recommend for someone to go into teaching now, or?
Well, it was in my blood. My dad was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher, and it was just probably what I was going to do. And yeah, I probably would. I would adapt. The last few years I taught, I had a lot of educational tools, electronic tools, like a projector that I could write something on a screen, and it would show up all over the room where kids could see it. I'm really in favor of the new technology. I really like it. I'd have to adapt, but I would do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much you were making when you first started teaching, but I figured it was $5,000 a year.
That's pretty close, yeah.
A year.
Yeah.
And you usually got paid once a month. And so that money you'd have to stretch it to pay you pay your bill as soon as you got paid, and you'd have to stretch it for the next month. And like you said before, most people worked in the summertime some people had other part-time jobs. So the situation is a little bit different. Had you ever thought about going into administration?
Yeah, I thought about it. But the relationships with the students, the interaction with them, I think was really important to me. And of course, as a principal, you can still have interaction with students, but not in the same way you can in the classroom. And a lot of the people that I've taught over the years have become friends and are still friends to this day. Well, you know, Brian Lilly, he's a friend of yours too, but Brian was one of my students, and he was very active in the Conservation Club, and we're still friends to this day. Of course, he lives in another place now. We used to hike together and ride bicycles. And
with social media now, you can still have some relationship, with some students. I never was on Facebook until I started a podcast. I just would, and I told my wife and my boys, don't mention me on Facebook unless you talk to me first. But then when I started on Facebook through the podcast, I started getting people that I had in school and, from years ago, and they were telling me how a lot of them had families and had been successful, and some had just wanted to touch base, and it's been very rewarding. I think social media is a good thing if you can keep it on that line. I was been right before the last election, I had to block several people because I'm not a real. I don't get into political arguments or any. I have opinions like anybody else does, but when you get into name calling and threats, things like that, I can't function with that.
Yeah, and I just think people should be nice to each other, no matter what their opinions are. Yeah.
The one last category. Not the least, but you have also been involved in the Methodist Church for many, many years, and in several different capacities. I know that you've spoken with the groups. You've been a Sunday school teacher. You've been a lot of different things. But like a lot of organizations, the Methodist Church attendance has fallen off some a little bit. They've had to merge different churches. Where do you think we are on a religious scale?
I think that some people don't like too much structure. That there's a phrase I heard somebody use recently called high control religion, where instead of just having a relationship with our Creator, people want to set up a lot of rules. And of course, Jesus kind of fought against that too, about all of the rules. And he was a bit of a radical in his day, and the church leaders at that time, it wasn't called a church, but the religious leaders of his time had him executed. So conflict in the religious community is not anything new. I love the United Methodist Church. I think the people who are leaving it are taking the wrong approach. We are very tolerant of people. As the Bible says, we're all sinners and come short of the grace of God. We have to understand that even if we might disagree with people on certain issues, we still have to live together and worship together. I kind of preached that. I filled the pulpit while our pastor was away last week, and my sermon was about being against selfishness. I think all of us have a tendency to think of ourselves first, looking out for number one, if you remember Bachman Turner Overdrive. But I just think that we need to start thinking more about other people and a little bit less about ourselves, even our country, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Well, Neal Lacey, I appreciate you coming by. Anything else you'd like to add as we talk?
Oh, there's probably a lot I'd like to add. You've done your research very well, Wayne.
Well, you're welcome to come back anytime you want, and you live close, and we can get it set up. And anybody out there that would done half the things that you've done and contributed in their life, just half the things that you've done and contributed to, would be a life worthwhile. And I know there's a lot of people that appreciate you and the work you've done, and you've left quite a legacy. And we're glad to have you. And will you come back?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm always enjoy talking.
All right. Well, anybody else out there that'd like to be on our program, we will get you on here, and you can go to awbennett50@gmail.com and contact me, or you can go to our website. It's called WayneBennettPodcast.com, and we just got the website on there the last couple of weeks, and we're adding to it every day. So get a hold of us. And remember, until next time, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. God bless you.